Hello and welcome to my Flosstube extra on how to finish these little ornaments. You can do this beaded edge with any small cross stitch or really, any embroidery or anything you want to make into a little pillow with the little beaded edge. That's what we're going to be working on today, is this beaded edge. So what you'll need today is your completed project with a back stitch around the edge. I did 10 stitches away from the design. These ornaments were 5 stitches away. It just depends on what you want. Then you're going to need a backing fabric. And you're going to want to go ahead and iron that and get rid of the dog hair, cat hair, of course. So then you're going to need your thread. I'm using the DMC that I used for the back stitch around the edge. In this case, looks like 849. And then you're going to need your beads. These are seed beads that I got in a set from Michaels, so I couldn't tell you what size they are, but the important thing is that your needle has to be able to go through a bead when threaded. So that's of utmost importance. Then you're going to want either some pins, or I'm going to use wonderclips today, just because my pins are across the room. You might want some fabric scissors and some polyfill. So I'm going to walk you through step by step. I did cut this fabric to size ahead of time. Let's see how long my thread is. It doesn't really matter which thread I used today, because they're all about the same length here. Now, I like to do a loop start, and this is Aida. This is, I think this is probably 14 count. By the way, this pattern is from Lemon Aida. Cute name. It's on Reddit. I will post the link in my description box. But if you search Lemon Aida or Yeet cross stitch, you'll find it. It's on Reddit. And then the fabric right there is from a retreat I did. So first, obviously, we're going to thread our needle and double check once again that the bead goes through once it's threaded, because if it doesn't, I'm going to have to start the video all over again, especially if I start throwing beads everywhere, which I've already got them all over the place. Sorry, my nails are such a mess. Okay, so that bead did go through. Okay. So our next step is going to be, if your fabric has a front and a back, which this one doesn't really, it's just like a fat quarter from Walmart, you're going to want the outside out for this project. I know most of the time when you do a finish, you want to do right sides in, but we're going to do right sides out. That's just the way I do it. And we could probably trim this a little, but I'm not ready to do that yet. So I'm going to fold this. I like to start on the side and not the top. We're going to fold this along that back stitch line. And that's going to get our backing fabric nice and evenly folded. And then we'll fold the front half on the back stitch line the opposite direction, so they're both going in. And on the first side, it's not super important to get that exact. That's probably good. But you want to make sure you still have all 4 sides with enough room to finish on that backing fabric. Okay, so I just clipped it a little so it'll stay in place as I start. Now that polyfill won't come into play until we get back to this last corner. So what we're gonna do, let me come up here. If you can't really see each individual stitch, but I'm gonna go through just the back stitch and then through the backing fabric. And because I do a loop start, I'm going to pull it almost all the way and then go through my little loop. And that leaves us a nice little beginning with no knot. Now comes the beading. Now on these ornaments, throwing beads. On these ornaments, I did every other stitch, got a bead. And that turned out pretty good for this size of bead. Now, in the past, I've done every third bead as well, every third stitch as well. But basically, you're just gonna thread your bead on your needle and do what you just did on the next stitch. And go through. And now you have a bead on your fabric. Now that's not quite locked in yet, so you can still tug it back because we haven't done the next stitch. So the next stitch, you remember I said I was going to do every other stitch. Now this bead is locked and it's not going anywhere. I know it's kind of a weird choice that I chose to use this dark gray with the yellow, but I was trying to match the silk in the fabric and I wanted the yellow so y'all could see the beads and so it would match my backing fabric. Now sometimes you have to be careful so the thread doesn't catch on the previous bead like it just did. And I just use my finger or the needle to kind of let it loose. Okay. I'm going to do one more and then we'll pause or speed up as I get to the corner, because the corner is where it starts to get tricky. And lock it in with the next stitch. Okay, so now I'm going to keep going until I get to the corner. You can go all the way to the corner before folding in. Basically, you're making a little pillow. So I'm going to keep going and I will catch up with you in a minute. Okay, I've gotten to my corner reached my corner. I'm going to set my beads aside for a minute so I don't spill them again. And I have stuck my needle to a magnet. It's still attached to my work, but I just like to have it where I know where it is, so I don't stab myself in the process. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing I just did earlier, where I fold it at that backstitch line. Give it a nice little finger press. Yeah, it's pretty close. Okay, and I'm going to trim this down here off camera, that little nub. Okay, now we're going to fold it in. Just fold it in. And this is kind of the finicky part. And you can trim, kind of do like a corner trim. But don't get too close, because I've done that in the past and you really messes up your corners if you have a little frayed edge poking out. Okay, so I got that side. I'll fold this side and kind of fold it back over. All right, so we should have approximately I'm going to tug a little bit more on this corner. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and clip again. What did I do? Okay, there we go. There we go. Got it. There was a little crease. I'm going to go ahead and put 3 clips on this time. All right, so now you can continue on. If your bead kind of disappears in the corner, give it a little tug. Something I was going to mention that I encountered, that's the word I was looking for, when I was doing my off-screen beading, was I had a couple beads that were too small. And if that's the case, what I do is I just throw them out, because if they're too small for this needle, they're too small for any of the projects that I personally am going to use these beads for. I do a variety of stitching. All right, here we go, rounding the corner. My last stitch was a bead, so my next stitch was without. Anyway, so you can save them if they're too small for your needle, which a good way to test is to just pull it down that far before you get it on the fabric. So, you can save them, you can use them for something else, but if it doesn't fit my needle, I just chuck it in the trash can or vacuum it up later if it doesn't make it off the table. Okay, so you're going to keep going like that, and that'll get you a little crispy corner. I have a cat fur in it, in my corner. Okay, so there's my little corner. Now you get to choose the spacing of your beads. Oh, and if it's done in this method, they'll all line up nicely like little soldiers. So they'll all face the same direction. But if you get to the corner and you want a different look at your corner, you can make sure there's even spacing here. I just go for whatever the next stitch is, whether it's with or without a bead. That's just my personal technique, because I'm not being too careful with these, although I do sometimes enter things in the fair. This piece is not going in the fair, and it's not a gift for anyone. It's just gonna go in a tray, probably. Okay, come on. There we go. So you're gonna go around till you've finished your fourth corner, if you've started where I did, which I will show you again momentarily. And that might take more than one thread, in which case I guess I'll pop in when I finish this thread. But I started little less than halfway up. So I want to be able to have enough room to stuff. And this corner right here, without the wonder clip, is going to be enough room for me to get my polyfill in. From this bead to this corner. That'll be enough room. But it all depends on your hand size, or if you're using a tool to help you. You can also add walnut shavings. Is it walnut shavings or pecan shavings? I don't even know. Okay, so here's an example. This bead doesn't fit. It won't go past the eye. So I take that off, I throw that away. Okay, so, or if you want a lot of weight to it, you can add poly pellets. I like Polyfil. It gives it a little pillow feel. That's what I want from my finishes. And you can also do this finish without the beads. That's how I finish my pillows and my biscornus. So if you do it without the beads, you get a very nice, even seam where you have a very straight line because of the back stitching. Okay, so I'm going to go around until I go boop, boop, boop to this corner, stopping by to finish off a thread along the way. So I'll stop back in a minute. Okay, I'm back, and I've got enough of, this is starting to be a small amount of detail to where I'm not liking working with it. So I'm going to go under my last stitch. That'll give me a tiny knot. It won't be visible. And then I'm gonna, I'm gonna do it again, but this time I'm gonna go through that loop that I just made with my thread. Again, this won't be visible. It'll be between two beads. And these beads are close enough. You're not going to see a knot that small. And now I'm just going to kind of stick my needle. Well, I don't like that. I'm going to stick it a little deeper. Maybe through the Aida inside. So you can't see my needle on either side through the fabric. And pull that through. And then I'm going to do that again another 1 or 2 times. Just to really anchor it. Now, since this is going to be a pillow, decorative I'm not too worried about it coming undone. It's not like it's a bean bag where it's going to get thrown around. If you're finishing something that might get thrown around, or, you know, in general, fiber abused, you might want to do a little different technique to end off. And you can do this however you want. This is just my method. Okay, so I've anchored it, and now I'm going to do a little snip to tip. And so now I've got the end, or is it the beginning? It's about to be the beginning, because we're going to do exactly what we just did at the beginning of the video. And we're going to, let me get my thread off my floss drop. I make these floss drops recycled. I've started to switch to more permanent ones, but in the interim, I just, you know, hole punched some cardboard. And if it's not some floss that you care about, looking pretty, it works. I mean, it's working for my conversion from bobbins to floss drops, shall we say. All right. Lick my thread as one does. By the way, these needles are embroidery needles. They have to be sharp, not tapestry needles. Your backstitch you can do with your cross stitch needle, your tapestry needle, but you want a good point on your embroidery needle. Okay, now since my last stitch here was my knot and it was a non-beaded stitch, I'm going to go through that one more time. Just to keep the pattern, because I don't want to start with a bead. Okay, so now I'm anchored, and I can pull my beads back over. I'm glad I didn't spill them. Once is enough for one day. And I can go on to the next stitch, which, because of that knot, looks really close. All right, so that's where my knot is compared to the rest of it. So you can see it, but it's not, sorry, that out of focus, but it's not going to be noticeable in the course of the pillow. Let me do a few more for you, and then we'll catch up again at the polyfill stage. Make sure it doesn't get wrapped around that last bead. Okay, so I am about nearing halfway around, and I'm going to go down to this corner and then I will be back. See you in a minute. Welcome back. We've reached the final corner of our piece. I've beaded all the way around. I'm almost back to where I've begun. I have done just past the corner, enough to keep the corner folded. So now I'm going to remove my last wonder clip that I had placed there just to keep things nice. I'll set my beads aside for a minute. My needle is anchored again on my magnet. That's the way I like to do it, just to keep it out of the way so I don't stab myself accidentally, like I said. So I've left myself a little hole, not too big. And I have my little cloud of polyfill here. I'm just going to start stuffing it in, and sometimes it takes a minute to get it going. And you want to make sure every once in a while you pull your thread out. And in fact, I'm going to wonder clip my thread to the side so that keeps it out. I'll have to remove that before I'm done stuffing, but it'll speed things up along the way because I won't be getting that thread out of the way. Now usually I use pins, but I haven't had wonder clips before. And the wonder clips have been such a great tool for both my sewing of project bags, my stitchy cases that I remodel jewelry boxes into a case for all my cross stitch supplies. I'll do another video on those someday. All right, so we got a long way to go. It's a very flat pillow right now, and this is just going to be to your personal amount of stuffing. The one thing I'm going to tell you is you're going to want to get it in the corners. So just kind of shove it in the corner. And you can stuff quite a bit in before you get to the corners. Okay, I hope I have enough polyfill over here. I might have to, I have a 5-pound bag in the other room that I got a couple of years ago that I've been slowly drawing from, but this is from a smaller bag that I've had for even longer. Now, you can trim your inside fabric a little bit more so it doesn't show. I'm not going to care that mine shows. You can also iron on some stabilizer on both sides on the inside, especially if you've got a larger weave or you've got traveled stitches that you don't want to show. This fabric doesn't show through because I did travel some between letters. But if you put that stabilizer on after you stitch, that'll take care of that. Ew, I got some viscous matter in my polyfill. gross. All right, so we're just gonna keep stuffing, and I would stuff off camera, but this isn't gonna take too long. And there are tools that will help you get into your corners, but I just kind of use my fingers and kind of jam them in the corners. Now, usually I would use a thread color that matches the backing. Instead of this gray, I would have used a yellow and then my yellow beads. So my thread would have been fairly invisible, but I wanted y'all to be able to see it. So that's just a matter of personal taste as well. Man, this wonder clip is not holding that thread in. It was a nice idea, but it's helping some. All right, so I've got my pillow about halfway, a little bit more than halfway stuffed. I do wish that I had trimmed this shorter, or maybe stuffed to the other side. I wonder if I can do that. Nope, not gonna mess with it. All right, stuffing a pillow. And if you want to know how long that took to do my the beading for this size pillow, which is, there's my hand, I started recording just after 10 p.m. and it is now just after midnight. So this is not a quick process unless, I mean, if you're doing something smaller like the little ornament, it's obviously going to go faster, but this is not the fastest finishing. So if you're on a timeline, like you're going to an exchange, a gift exchange, or you just want it to be done like 5 minutes ago, this is not the finish for you. But if you have a couple minutes and you want something a little different, I don't see finishes like this. In fact, I used to be a judge at the state fair. I volunteer at the county fair, and I've never seen someone finish with beads like this other than myself. Now, I have seen a pattern written with the beads like this, and that was for a biscornu that I made last year for a retreat smalls exchange. We're getting there. We're almost done stuffing. All right, let's see. Now at this point, it's pretty plump. Now I could use some more in this corner. Yeah, my corners are pretty flat, so I just kind of work my finger in there. And then I'll add a little bit more to this corner where my current thread is. But once you're done, you can kind of squeeze, 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 and it'll disperse your polyfil just a little. I'm going to have enough polyfil pulled out of the bag I don't recommend, if you're finishing a pillow like this, putting potpourri in. Somebody asked me for these ornaments if you could put a sachet in, and you could. You could put a potpourri or some sort of scented thing, but I worry that the oil and the scent would stain the fabric over time. So I really don't recommend it. Okay, so after all that, this is how much polyfill I have left, which in the course of polyfill is not that much. All right. So I can take off that wonder clip, and we're just going to finish it the way we've been doing and end the way we ended the other threads. So, you know, you've got this by now. I'm confident. Whew, I almost just knocked my beads over. I'm going to clip this one more time. Clipping it off camera just to get my fingers around. And sometimes something that I do encounter with the polyfill is you get little threads, little puffs of polyfill sticking out. And what I do is I just wait until the end, and once it's all sewn up at the very, very end, there's another bead that doesn't fit. Once it's all sewn up at the very, very end, I just kind of pluck the polyfill from the edges of the pillow. Like right there, there's a little, I just kind of give it a little tug, and it won't pull out more than what's sticking out. Okay. Sorry, that was taking some finagling. That's a fun word, isn't it? Finagling. I don't know how old you think I am from that, but I am 38 and I use the word finagle more often than I probably should. Okay, there's an example of I just trapped the last bead, so I'm going to loosen it up. Sorry, and retighten it so it's not around that last bead. Please let me know in the comments below if you try this. Tag me in your posts on Instagram. I am at KnittingTrex on Instagram. Or let's see. I'm trying to think of other ways you can contact me. I'm also Knitting T-Rex on Threads, which is like the Twitter alternative. But if you have Threads, you probably have Instagram. So. But I would love to see your finishes. I would love to hear any questions, comments, concerns. Keep them nice, please. I am fragile. We've got a little ways to go. I should have done this off camera because we're at 15 minutes with just this segment. Y'all fast forward if you want to, because I mean, you've got the idea by now. I will tell you real quick how I added these hangers. These are kind of like Mardi Gras beads or like strung pearls where the beads do not move on the thing. This was just something I had in stash. Somebody had gifted me, so I beaded up to this point, and then I stuck this beaded thread in with 2 beads below, and then I beaded 1, and then I stuck the other end in with 2 beads below, and then I beaded some more in pattern, you know, bead 1, stitch 1, bead 1, stitch 1, and it's not going to come out. It's not sewn in, it's not tied in, it's not glued in. It's just held in by the tension of the beaded border. So you can do that, or you can, I mean, you can do a ribbon tie. You can do however you want. This is your project. And again, I would love to see any other ways you do your projects. See right here, you can see it's starting to get a little, well, you can't see. It's starting to get a little fuzzy. So if I give it a tug, there's a little bit of polyfill right there. But usually I don't tug until after the fact, because you don't want to rip out more than you need. You want as much polyfill as possible to stay in the pillow. And sometimes you have to tame your polyfill a little bit. Just, you know, stuff it back in there. That polyfill answers to you, not the other way around. This is my least favorite part of the project, by the way, the polyfill. The stuffing of the polyfill and the last few stitches. I'm trying to do this at the edge of the table, so usually I would hold this against my chest to use as a third hand to get it as close of an angle as I could. So I'm sorry if I keep going off screen just a little bit. Now that kind of almost looks like I'm going to have more Aida than I will backing fabric, but I'm not too worried about it. And what you can do if that's the case is, see, I skipped a hole. And draw in, go where you normally would. And if you do that a couple times, alternating, so like the next one I'll do where it's supposed to go, and then the one after that I'll skip a hole. Okay, so this is the one where I'm going to skip a hole. So right here, I'm going to go 1 to the second thread. And then on the backing, I'll put it in the same spot where it should have gone. Yeah, I'm still going to have a little bit of a mouth there, but 'tis the nature of hand sewing, I suppose. We are almost there, gang. I think this is going to be our last bead, although I could be wrong. No, there's going to be one more after this one. Now I'm going to skip a hole. And it'll be our last bead. Okay, and then we'll do one more without the bead. And this is our last stitch. So as I pull it closed, I'm going to put that little knot in like I did before. Yep, there's a little pucker. So that I wouldn't enter in the fair because it's got a little pucker. Now, if the pucker was down here, I might consider entering it. But alas. Also, the subject matter, you know, the judge isn't going to get yeet. I am going to add one more bead. I think one more bead. One more bead. Okay. I know I already tied my knot, but I think he just needs this one more. All right. I'm sorry about that camera angle. And there it wrapped the bead again. So got to give it a little loosen and pull it over. There we go. Alright, and then we'll tie us a second little knot. Now, I'm sure you can do this without knots. I'm sure you can. But this is the way I do it because I want it secure forever. Okay. Now I'm going to do like before, where I just kind of tucked my needle in, kind of wove through the Aida on the inside. I can hear a squirrel chewing on my roof, which tells you that my dog is asleep. See, now I can pluck some Polyfil because it's done. You know what? I don't think that's a squirrel on the roof. I think it's the fireplace. Okay. which means I need to go poke the fireplace. Okay, so there's my third and final kind of tuck in. And as, again, as Mel Brooks would say, we're going to snip the tip. I'm going to toss the end of my floss because that's too small to save. I'm going to take my beads and put those away before anything else so they don't spill. And we've got a little pillow. Now I do wish this wasn't puckered. But, oh, and this corner needs to be a little fluffed out. So I'm just going to kind of manhandle it. Now, I mean, don't manhandle it too hard because you want your beads to be on there good. Okay. That did not help at all. Might just have a flat corner. So stuff your corner more is the lesson there. But now you have a little pillow, a little beaded finish. And the back side, again, you would use a coordinating thread because this shows. But overall, I'm happy with it. So thanks for joining me. Make sure you leave me a little like or a comment just so I know you've been here. Have a great day.